Hello, we're back. The Saluki Gamescast. This is episode 85 for July 26, 2024. My name is Justin Young. Joining me, as always, are Christina Ivey and Mario Sanders. How are both of you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah. It's summer.
We've been off for, I think, almost a full month at this point. How's your summer been so far?
Mine has been busy, but hopefully slowing down. I was in a show here in Carbondale. I think we even mentioned it. It was called The Drag.
I think so, because you were like just starting to get prepared for it at the time. So how'd that show go?
It went really well. So it's originally by Mae West, but it was adapted by some professors at Boise State, which is where I used to work. And so it was cool that the person who adapted it actually flew in to see our rendition of it. And
cool.
Really it was well received. Essentially,
was this somebody you knew?
No, actually. Well, okay. So it was adapted by a theater professor at Boise State and a drag queen named Minerva Jane. I know Minerva. I did not know this faculty member.
Okay.
And Minerva wasn't able to make it full. I want to say like she got sick and she was worried it was COVID, something like that. Mm-hmm. But it was great. Like he had wonderful things to say about the person that played our Duchess, who is essentially the Mae West character. He really liked mine, and I told people, I was like, it was basically me just playing me. I was a very flamboyant person who was, getting inebriated at a drag show, and I was like, this is not
I'm not pretending.
Yes,
this is my Saturday.
Exactly, and
all those previous experiences were method acting.
Oh, my acting coach would be so proud. But yeah, so it honestly was just me having fun, and it was nice to have something to get me out of the house. And then I traveled to Boise to bless a burlesque competition, and then I went camping and got bit by spiders and stung by wasps. So,
But you avoided the snake.
I avoided the snake barely. He was in the bathhouse at the end and nearly got me. And fortunately, I'm disgusting and did not shower that night. But whew, it was a close one.
I think that's a valid reason not to shower. Like, if you stopped at a rest stop on the way home or something and somebody said something, I think you could go, listen, there was a snake in the shower. I am not getting in the shower with a snake.
I'll have to find a picture because someone just happened to take a picture of the copper head that was in the bathhouse. Right at the moment, a gigantic spider was also going into. So it's like.
Oh, so it was a duel.
You
were intruding on territory.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I'll go to bed stinky.
Or it was like a meeting of
the creepy crawlies coalition.
A scorpion was running late or something.
God. I was terrified and stinky, and it's fine. But that's it. It feels like a very summer story to talk about going camping. So that's it.
That sounds like a pretty big adventure.
Yeah.
How about you, Mario?
It's been pretty good. I went home back to the Bay Area for about 5 weeks or so. It was really good. Got to see some friends and family. My cousin got married, which was nice. It was very small. It was at the San Francisco City Hall, and so that was really nice. I hadn't actually been inside, but it's a beautiful building, but it's interesting. You just kind of do it. Like there's no one. You just find a space and you get married there.
Oh.
It's like they clearly have these different floors, and it's on both sides, and you just kind of occupy a space. I don't know if there's a sign up. I don't know what the whole process is, but it was just we're getting married here. And it's all right, sounds good.
So were you there in an official capacity as a witness or?
No, I was just there because it was my cousin.
Yeah.
They had, a handful of family show up. Obviously it had to be a very small gathering that was there because of the size of it. But so that was nice. I went to a handful of baseball games, a couple Giants games, River Cats game, who's a minor league team for the Giants. And I wasn't planning on it, but last minute, my cousin's husband texted me about going to an A's game, which I'm actually really glad that I did. The A's are moving, and so this is going to be their last season in Oakland. They're going to be playing in Sacramento for the next 3 years, and that's close enough that I'll probably go to a couple more games, but potentially being the last time to get to go to the Oakland Coliseum since the Raiders are no longer there either. I imagine I wouldn't be surprised if they tear it down because it's in like a lot of cities. The stadiums are right next to each other. So the A's and the Raiders played in the same stadium at the Coliseum, and then the Warriors played at Oracle, which is like they share a parking lot. None of those teams are there anymore.
Oh,
So like the Warriors are now in San Francisco. The Raiders are in Las Vegas. The A's are moving to Las Vegas. So you've got this massive space with 3 stadiums that no teams will be playing in.
wow.
And so the city of Oakland owns the Coliseum, so they can rent it out. That's why the A's aren't going to be playing there because their contract with the Coliseum is ending, and they couldn't like come to an agreement. Or the city of Oakland couldn't come to an agreement with Major League Baseball. Like they kind of tried, understandably, to hold that a little hostage.
Yeah.
We were talking before about how way back when the city of Kansas City was able to do that when the A's moved from Kansas City to Oakland, and they were able to basically guarantee that they would get the next team, like the next expansion team. The city of Oakland basically said, we will let the A's play at the Coliseum, but we get the next team that baseball expands, or the next team that's moving comes to Oakland.
Right.
And MLB was like, nah, we'll find somewhere else. And and it just, that relationship turned really antagonistic. So
when situations crop up like that, it always blows my mind because I always just think, well, then, like, give that owner a new team. Like, let them take the expansion team and, like, make them sell the A's to somebody else. Like, why move the A's and, like, get a new expansion team back into the same spot?
Yeah, I think, and I think that's the hard thing. The A's attendance is really low, and that's on purpose. The A's fans have just essentially boycotted over the last few years. But anyways, to get back to, went to that, and so I'm really glad to have had the chance to go to that. I kind of thought about it while I was back home, and so for it to actually happen, I'm glad. And so those are the big things. I went to a concert as well, which was a lot of fun, as a band called Say Anything. I listened to them a lot in high school. They were doing like a 20th anniversary tour of one of their albums. I didn't graduate high school 20 years ago, but
I did. This is actually coming up as my 20-year reunion.
But so I saw them with my cousin, which was.
Do they have a song about John Cusack?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if like he's
somewhere,
mentioned in a song.
Yeah.
But I saw them with my cousin. She and I have seen them together probably like 4 or 5 times. So
nice.
It was a very sort of nostalgic concert to get to go to. It was very fun. So it was a good trip home, and so summer's been good thus far.
Well, that sounds great. My summer has been much less like exciting, I suppose. Like I haven't been traveling a great deal. I did go home for a little bit and got to see some friends, see some family, and so that's always like neat. It's always also weird because when I go home and I'll see friends who still live there, and we'll be like, okay, let's go out to eat. And where do you want to go eat? Well, let's go somewhere that we haven't been before, right? Like, surely there's like a new restaurant. Because, like, if you don't know, like, Paducah, Kentucky is the fast food capital of the nation. Like, there are more.
Like, legit?
Yes. Like, there are more fast food places in Paducah per capita than any other city in the country.
Wow. All right.
There are a lot of restaurants in Paducah. Like, it's one of those things where you're like, if a restaurant goes out of business in Paducah, you think it must just be horribly run because people in Paducah do not cook. They like go out to eat for every meal.
And so do you get like sort of one-off type of fast food, or is it mostly like chains?
No, it's mostly like chains.
Okay.
I mean, it's like, you have like 3 or 4 Hardee's and 10 McDonald's and like 5 Wendy's, and
Wow.
then like you have, like your Garfields and your Texas Roadhouse and your Tumbleweeds and like.
And so, I mean, you have to tell us what is a Garfield and what is a Tumbleweeds?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know that we have a Tumbleweeds. I was trying to think of like the sort of
places.
like steakhouse sort of restaurants.
Is that what those 3 things? Like, I know what Texas Roadhouse is. Are all 3 of those
I don't
steakhouse?
think I've ever been to a Texas Roadhouse.
Look, she's from Texas. It's kind of offensive.
When it's your birthday, they put
cover
you on
your
a
ears.
saddle.
This is like asking an Australian about
been to Outback?
Outback.
I see.
It's like it's very offensive.
Okay.
The decor is cool. It's very honestly, the decor. If you wonder what it's like to live in Texas, just step inside of a Texas Roadhouse and be like, and then you can go away.
Okay.
So the only thing I remember about Texas Roadhouse is they're the one where the waitresses used to sit down with you at
Yes.
your table when they took your order.
Sometimes they still do. Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't been in a while. I didn't know. Anyway, so I was dating a woman one time, and we went in there to eat, and the waitress like sits down, and this is a point where like I'm in my 30s, and this waitress is like probably like 17, 18 or something, probably 18 at least, because she had to serve alcohol. And she sits down next to me, and the woman I was dating was very upset over this. And I was like, she sat down long enough to take my order.
Clearly,
didn't, like,
you've never
crawl
been
in
to
my-
a Texas Roadhouse before.
She didn't like crawl in my lap to do it. You know what I mean?
she didn't stay for the entirety of our dinner or something. That would have been awkward.
So it's a steakhouse,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Garfield's is just like kind of an American restaurant.
lasagna.
No, like it's has nothing to do with the cat. Is very disappointing.
It's very
Well, I mean, really, like if there's a restaurant named Garfield's and it has nothing to do with the cat or the president, what the hell are you
I
doing?
just imagine Justin in like all of his Garfield gear going inside, being like so excited, and they're not being anything, and then being like, oh.
Oh no, I feel like Justin is gonna drive by, see a Garfield's, and just like shake his head disappointed. I'm not in a real dad style. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed.
Look, it's false advertising.
There's no president in here.
If you drove by a restaurant and its name was Exploding Cakes, and you went inside and there was no cake at all.
I was gonna say if there was a place called Sonic's and they didn't have chili dogs, but I think there is a place called Sonic's, and I wouldn't be surprised if they had chili dogs.
I'm pretty sure they did.
But do they have the hedgehog?
No, but IHOP does.
Barely.
Barely. We have been there. We did the research.
They just named old foods after Sonic people.
It's just a reskin. It's like a Fortnite skin for
Yeah.
their breakfast.
I got gypped into eating an IHOP Eggs Benedict because I wanted an Eggman.
Hey, I still stand by how disappointing it was. There wasn't at least like a standee of Sonic or somebody in
yeah.
For
there.
us to take pictures with.
Yeah. You think we're getting Alicia out of there without her getting a picture?
That's that they knew. They knew, like, you know what, we have to play this safe. You know, we'll get the Sonic fans in, but we can't go too hard, otherwise they'll never leave.
Have you seen these sickos? They're still playing Sonic games.
I just know that we went to order and the guy was like, "What?" Oh,
I think we had to point at the picture.
so you want the blueberry pancakes?
You weirdos. Yes, we had the waiter at IHOP was being very judgmental towards us.
Listen,
It's too early on a Friday for y'all to be doing this.
He was right. He was right to judge us.
we judged us secretly. I'm still upset that we didn't go to the Garfield Olive Garden.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but did you see Johnny's story? Or, no, it was Craig. Craig posted this on Facebook that a cat got dropped onto the roof of the Olive Garden, like a hawk or something had picked up a cat.
Did see it.
And so I'm imagining a kitten.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a hawk could pick up a full-grown cat, but I'm imagining like a kitten, small cat, and apparently like dropped it onto the roof of the Olive Garden, and somebody like rescued it and everything. And so my response to him on Facebook was, this is so much better of an origin story than the Garfield movie we got.
I mean, that's pretty close. But you're not wrong.
Just those small tweaks is what the hawk. It was the hawk.
All right, and then in terms of regional differences, Hardee's is Carl's Jr.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Which I always assumed that, I found this out recently. I always assumed like Carl's Jr. was like the big one because they bought Hardee's, but Hardee's is substantially bigger than Carl's Jr. Like massively, like big difference, like 10-to-1 number of restaurants or something. And yeah, so yeah, regional differences. Hardee's, now they basically serve the exact same food.
Yeah.
They used to be more dramatically different.
So did you get to go to any new restaurants while you're in town?
No, like, well, maybe we did. But like I was thinking, like with my friend, we were like, I was asking him, I was like, well, where do you want to go? Like, is there anything new? And he's like, I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I was like, I don't know either. I don't live here. Like, I sort of keep up only through what other people tell me. And we finally were just like, well, let's go to this place downtown, Paducah Beer Works. And he said, I have no idea what that is. And I said, how do you live here and not know what this place is? I was like, it's not like it just opened last month. It's been here for a few years. I've been like on multiple occasions, and he was like, I've never even heard of it. And
the hands up, like,
I don't know.
So we did go down there, and that's kind of a cool place because it's in the old Greyhound bus station, and they opened a restaurant, and then they have like a music venue in there.
Oh,
so
that's
they
cool.
bring in local bands and stuff. So yeah, just getting home is always nice. And so just some light travel like that for the most part. We have been off for a while, so we actually have quite a bit to talk about. So let's jump on into that. And we'll start with what you've been playing. Christina, what have you been playing?
Honestly, not a lot because of the travel. So like my phone games, I did have some folks over Wednesday night to play Jackbox, and it was really nice because it was some people from the department. And so if you've never played Talking Points with communication majors, you're missing out. Like it was really good.
Is that the one where you have to do like a PowerPoint style presentation?
Yeah, and so like it hits different when everybody there isn't afraid of public speaking and as a matter of fact like excels at it. It was fun. And then I've been watching a lot of Dead by Daylight because they've had a lot of updates. They have like a 2v8 now, which is essentially 2 killers and then 8 survivors. They finally have cross progression, which means I can now get it for my PlayStation 5 because I won't have to grind out all of that stuff again. Mm-hmm. And then they got Lara Croft is one of the survivors that they've just added. So lots of big stuff up that people have been asking for a long time. So
I'm surprised that game hasn't had cross progression prior to this.
Honestly, yeah. From my understanding, it's been trying to balance the licensing of Xbox, PlayStation, and as a matter of fact, with Switch, you can play, like you can utilize cross progression on the Switch, but if you have stuff on the Switch, you can't utilize it on other platforms. Oh, no. So, which honestly, out of all of them, the fact that Nintendo's the one being chinchy with the document or what's a like contract, that's the word I'm looking for. It doesn't surprise me that Nintendo is the one that's being weird about it.
That was part of the problem, I know, when they were trying to get Nintendo characters into Fortnite.
Yep.
Nintendo was like, okay, well, we'll do this, but then they can only be on the Switch.
Exactly.
And Epic was like, well, we sell DLC, it has to be everywhere.
Exactly. And so I'm not surprised that the Switch is the one being fussy about that. But like I said, I will. I don't know if I get to take from my PlayStation because I realized that it was under my ex's account that I had years and hours worth of stuff. But I did have a separate account on my computer that I think I can bring over. So at least I don't have to start over from scratch on my PlayStation 5. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Mario, have you been playing much?
Not a ton of the early part of the summer, but I've been playing more recently. And so I think the 3 games that I've played through are Cuphead for the first time. Mini Shoot Adventure, which you had talked about a while back because that was on sale at one point, and Tiny Rogues. So those are the 3. And so, Cuphead is a pretty well-known game, I think, at this point. I did not play the DLC. I didn't buy it, but so I just played through the base game. And while, it's a very hard game, it's a very good game. I, fully understand why it has and probably will maintain a legacy because obviously for its art style to begin with, but the gameplay, while frustrating, is really, really good.
Cool. Yeah, I love Cuphead. That's a fantastic game, and like one of those games that just came out of nowhere when it originally premiered.
And then you had talked about Mini Shoot Adventures a pretty decent amount. When Steam had their summer sale, it was on sale for some amount, and so I picked it up, and that's also a very good game. I got another friend to buy it and play through it. He really liked it as well. In terms of I was going to say in terms of games that came out in 2024, I think that might be at the top of the list, but then I remembered Balatro and Helldivers, and then I made me think, well, there's some pretty good games that have come out this year. Yeah. It might not be last year, but in terms of the big games, but there have been some pretty solid.
I think some good surprising ones that people didn't expect.
Sure. Yeah, there were very high expectations for some of those games that came out last year, but sure. I think while I'm sure there are other games, obviously those 3, I don't think the expectations were anything if not, certainly not high.
We kind of joked about Balatro when we were first talking about it, and then it became wildly addicting and is still pretty popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all 3 of those games, even Helldivers 2, I mean, I remember when they showed the first trailer for that, everybody was like, oh, that's cool that they're doing something with Helldivers. But nobody really, I don't think anybody predicted that game was going to hit the way it did.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just saw that they have, I think their biggest expansion or biggest update yet coming fairly soon. So I wouldn't be surprised if you get a number of people who return back to it shortly. And then the last game is Tiny Rogues, is a dungeon crawler, roguelike, sort of a twin stick game. It's fun. I feel like I like the base game more than what they added to it with the DLC. But that might not necessarily be the most popular opinion compared to other people who I've talked to about it. But that's also a good game.
Cool.
And it's $5 or $6 or something like that.
Nice. Yeah.
Steam is full of so many games like that now that are $5 or $6 games that you could get, 10, 20 hours out of. And the sort of thing often when people say, well, people aren't buying these $60, $70 games anymore, that's part of the reason why. Or even something like Balatro is what, $10, $20?
Maybe 15 to 20.
Yeah. And how many hours have you put into Balatro this year?
Probably close to 40 or So
Yeah. And, so you're getting as much out of that as you would a full $70 game in most cases. Yeah, that's cool. So I played a couple of things. I played a game called Dungeon Clawler, not Crawler. So this is a dungeon game where you battle using a claw machine.
Ooh.
So when you enter into a battle, the bottom of the screen is your character and the enemies, and the top of the screen is a claw machine that has different items. So it has like shields and daggers and swords and magic wands and like giant hammers. And you have a claw machine arm that you can like move over different parts of where all these items are, and then reach down and grab them, and then it has to carry them over and drop them in, and then they funnel down to your character, and your character uses those against the enemy.
is this game fully out? Because I feel like I saw someone play it, but I think it was still
It's a demo.
Okay.
It is currently a demo that is out. So it's sort of almost like a randomized card game, in that after each level, you are given a chance to add an additional item, and then that item gets dropped into the claw machine part for the next battle that you get into, and like progressively. So like you can decide, I want to add a bunch of hammers into this and everything. And so as the items get bigger, like the hammer, those are much more difficult to pick up than like the daggers, for example. And so like and they have claw machine physics. So like you'll pick up some items, but you barely have a grip on them. So they'll kind of fall as you start moving. I've had ones that like would fall and like hit the edge and like kind of tumble over and fall down the chute. So there's like some neat things that happen with that. It's a neat game. Like, I think my reaction to it so far is it's like a really kind of cool twist on that dungeon crawler sort of format. I don't know that I'm in love with the game, but like it does a lot of fun things. And like, even like there are bonus areas where you go and it'll be like a Plinko game. Right. And so like you have to catch the item as it drops down. There's other ones where it's like a capsule machine. So there'll be a bunch of bonus items and like you twist it, and then like items might fall if they fall down the chute at the right time and everything. So it's doing a lot of cool stuff, kind of like, hey, let's take these sort of games of chance and everything that you might play in an arcade, and like build a dungeon crawling game around those.
Yeah, so I didn't really watch someone play it. I'd seen that they were playing it, but the other place I saw is somebody had posted a meme. It was like, welcome to the roguelike casino. We've got claw machine. We've got poker. And it was Balatro. We've got 21. And it was the Dungeons the Degenerate Gamblers game. We've got roulette. And it was the other one. So it's just like all of these different games that were like essentially casino games.
Right.
We've got craps. And it was like dicey dungeons. And so, yeah, it's interesting that, that has become such a, I don't know,
sort of like a
staple
subgenre.
Yeah, that these developers are pulling from for the, those games of chance blended with the roguelike, which is very much also sort of a game of chance as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is like, how do you breathe new life into a dungeon crawler in this day and age? Particularly if you're an indie developer, right? Like if you're making Baldur's Gate 3, you have the time and the money and the energy to like, the team and the scope to build something massive, and something that's sort of, like, I don't know if revolutionary, but certainly iteratively revolutionary, and like how it's changing the way people play those sorts of games. But if you're a little indie developer, like, what do you do to set yourself apart? And like, you sort of like change up the game mechanics in some fashion. And so that's what this game is doing. And I like its ambition. Like, more than I think I even like playing the game. I like its ambition. And so I'm impressed with that. I don't know if it's a game that I'll play a ton of when it finally comes out, but I'm impressed that somebody came up with this concept and it works for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so, you bring that up of what does an indie developer have to do? It's that, or my friend was playing Mini Shoot after I had played it. And I think another friend came in like, what is this spaceship Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past? And they're like, yeah, more indie developers should really just do that. Just make A Link to the Past, but change it in the slightest way.
But, I was thinking...
it's, teasing, of course, but...
Well,
but yeah.
I think when I played that game, one of the reactions I had was, we don't have enough games that copy Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
Like,
at least not A Link to the Past.
Like, that's a formula that works exceptionally well. And, like, you compare that to Metroidvanias. We get a ton of Metroidvanias.
Yeah.
But we don't get a whole lot of Zelda-likes. I mean, we do occasionally. Like, I'm not saying we never get them. But, and when they do, like, you get something like Darksiders, at least the first one, which is, like, a fantastic Zelda game. But it's a M-rated Zelda game, right? And this is like even something different. This is, well, how do we take a bullet hell shooter and like integrate that with the Zelda formula? And like that's difficult if your name isn't Nintendo as a big publisher of games. It's really hard to take those sorts of risks, but these indie developers can do that more often. Nintendo can do whatever the hell they want because they're Nintendo and they're crazy. But like a lot of these other developers, I see the struggle. Like, if you're Microsoft, it's hard to invest, $100 million plus into a game like Mini Shoot Adventure. But yeah. Speaking of Nintendo, the other game I played was Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. So the best way to describe this, if you played any of the NES remix games.
Yes, that's what it was. I was like this. I was looking at pictures of it and I was like, this looks familiar. And I couldn't. Yep.
So this is very much that, in a lot of ways. The presentation borrows heavily from that. They've done some interesting things to really kind of ground this. And so if you're not familiar, there really was a Nintendo World Championship. The movie, The Wizard, sort of plays off of this. But there was an actual event that was the Nintendo World Championship, where they had like sort of regional tournaments. And then like, if you won that, you went to the national tournament, and then they like had one person who was crowned the champion. And as part of that, they had people playing, a few games together. So like it wasn't you were just competing on one game. It was like you were playing Super Mario Brothers, Rad Racer, Tetris, and I forget what the fourth one is. I think there's a fourth game in there. And so they're sort of taking that idea and like, okay, well, how do we build a game around that? So this takes something like 11, 13 NES games. They're all first-party Nintendo games. So it's your Super Mario Brothers games, it's your Zelda games for the NES, it is Kid Icarus, Ice Climber, all.
It's got Metroid and Kirby.
Yeah,
the bike game.
Oh yeah,
Excite Bike.
Yeah.
It's those sorts of games, and it is taking those and sort of like turning all of those games into bite-sized speedrunning contests. So when I was playing this, I thought of you, Mario. I know.
Yeah, and I've watched a pretty decent amount of it. I don't know if the game is for me, but I do enjoy watching it.
Yeah.
But I understand why, just because of what we've talked about, and that I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. So
speedrunning, that is.
So there's a couple, like there's some issues with this game, but what it does, it breaks these games down to little bite-sized pieces. So it'll be something like, hey, collect the mushroom at the start of 1-1 in Super Mario Brothers. Kill 3 enemies in Zelda. It'll be get in the door on Super Mario Brothers 1-2. So it's these little sort of bite-sized things. I think like maybe at the longest they're like 2 minutes, but like a lot of them are like 5 seconds or less that you're trying to do. And then you get a rank. So you get like an A plus, A plus plus, up to an S rank. And then they have leaderboards. Each week they rotate in a new group of challenges, and then they create like national, or I guess worldwide, leaderboards out of that. So you can see, like, did you get the fastest time on this challenge in Super Mario Brothers?
I saw that they also are, sorry to interrupt you, ranking leaderboards based off of age as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so they do it by your year of birth as well. So, which will tie into one of the issues, and maybe one of the issues of why you don't like
Gen
that
Xers
as much.
don't have to go up against the Zoomers.
So like all that's cool. The problem when it comes to those leaderboards is that's it for leaderboards. So there is no leaderboard of like your friends. So like you can't play this game and see, like, if you and I both had this, Mario, we can't compete with each other through the system, through the game itself. Like you would have to complete it and then, like, you know, text me, like,
screenshot your personal best or something like that.
And like send that to me, right? And then then I have to like decide, like, well, is he BSing me? Did he get this off Twitter or something? And I would have no way of knowing, right? Like, not that that's that big of an issue, but like this should be like streamlined. This should be like really easy. Like if you're going to create this competitive speedrunning game, yes, you want to compete against the entire world, but you also want to compete against your friends.
Right, like you could just make this like a Mario Party, right? These are just the mini games, right? And it's, you know, there's more. Get the morph ball is 4 seconds long, but like if I got to do that against 3 of my friends as compared to completely random people, I mean, like, I think part of it for me as well is the fact that they're so short. Like while I enjoy speedrunning, I think like everybody, I don't want to reset over and over and over again. And I think trying to grind out fractions of seconds, that to me is not all that interesting, but I enjoy watching it. I think
it's also like a skills-based thing. If it's anything like Remix, where certain things that you would have worked for forever back in the original game, it's like, here, can you do that? Like, I remember, I don't know if this is in the World Championship, but one of the ones in Remix that would always stump me is when an original Nintendo, you were supposed to like hit the Koopa shell so many times in a row. You had to do it like 19 or 20 times in a row. Right. And I was never very good at that. So those ones would be kind of frustrating.
Yeah. So, I mean, the two of you are bringing up like valid points of kind of what are the problems. So one of the issues is they're so short that that makes it really easy to repeat them in one way, right? Because,
sure.
Like you're not investing 5 minutes or 5 hours into this, you're investing 5 seconds. So if you mess up, you just instantly restart. And it's really good about doing the like instant quick restart. But you're right, you're shaving, you know, a 10th or 100th of a second off of a time, which I think that takes a very certain type of personality to really get into that.
Yeah.
And you're also doing that without being able to compete against people directly.
Yeah.
Right. So like, again, you're not competing with your friends, which to me would be the whole value
For sure.
of the game. There is a local multiplayer mode that you can play with, I think it's 8 people at once. And so like, it'll actually put everybody's like screen up on the screen at the same time. So you can see everybody like playing through it at the same time. So that's much more your kind of party game mode. But again, you're doing this thing that's like 5 seconds long, and then you're having to wait for everybody else to finish, and then it has to load up the next game. Not that that takes that long, but there's more downtime than there is playtime. So like that's where, to me, the like how short the goals are becomes a problem, because I'm actually spending more time in the menu than I am actually playing the games, playing the challenges.
And for me, I guess for the thing that I enjoy the most when it comes to speedrunning is racing it with friends. Like the two that I had really any experience with were Super Mario 64 and Celeste. And I picked those two games because I could race them with friends.
Right.
It's not a, did I do it sort of on my own to try and get a new personal best? Yeah, but like I said, it was more so to, yeah. So I think if they had that where you could, so essentially create a private lobby where you're racing them with friends, I would probably buy it very quickly. But
Right.
as it is right now, it doesn't have a ton of appeal to me as a player, but I kind of love the idea of it.
Yeah, I think the other issue is, right, you're including these 11, 13 games, whatever it is. These are old NES games, right? It's kind of amazing that Nintendo is reselling these games 40 years later still. And you look at a lot of these games, why not include the full version of Super Mario Brothers so that you can do a full run
Sure.
like of Super Mario Bros. You can't do that in this game. So then I see that becoming like maybe the preferred way to speed run these classic games. If you have that built into it with the timer and that gets automatically uploaded to a leaderboard and everything.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Because then that becomes a way for, a group of friends to say, hey, let's see who can beat Super Mario Brothers the fastest.
I do think the majority, if not all of those, are available on the online.
Right, they are.
But that is then just something else you have to boot up. And
Right.
it doesn't have
It doesn't have the wrapping and
Yeah.
the timing and all that.
And I think, that would be so cool if you had the full game in there. And so you could, and you could just like race side by side.
Yeah.
So that because I think that's like such a good thing, especially like on Twitch, watching two people do it. You can pull up both of their streams and like constantly see like, oh, this is where this person is. This is where this person is. And so,
So this
Yeah.
game does not have online multiplayer. So you can't get with a friend and race them. What it does have, it has a fake like lobby that you get into and it matches you with other people, but it's not really matching you with other people. It's matching you with the ghost data
yeah,
of those people.
I've seen that as well.
So then what it does is it puts you in with like 7 other people and you play one game and it eliminates half the people. Then you play another game, it eliminates half the people, and then you end up with a winner. Like even the format of that's fine. But like the fact that you're only doing it with ghost data, like I can't get a group of friends together and like, let's play this online together live as we're doing this.
I wonder if that's just like the server space that would require as compared to like having to do it all at the same time.
Right.
Whereas like compared to like the Mario Maker where you could like race, the lag that you would run into if you were trying to race 7 other people on, the McDonald's Wi-Fi.
But
But they have like Mario Kart where you can race people online.
they do, but I don't know.
this is a combination of Nintendo's online servers.
Yeah.
Like other Xbox and PlayStation do this fine with their games, right? Like we were just talking about Helldivers. They run Helldivers fine, with PlayStation. So like this is more of a condemnation of like Nintendo can't get this stuff working.
It is so difficult to play. Like I have Dead by Daylight on Switch and I don't like to play it. Not because of the graphics, because I think I could deal with, because Dead by Daylight doesn't have great graphics anyway, but it is incredibly obvious that I'm the player that's playing on the Switch because I'm lagging so bad. And like there's been a couple of games where I've played where the killer goes to like take a swipe at me and I jump 3 feet in front, like where I am, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I promise I'm not cheating. So yeah.
And then the other thing I'll say about it is, you start with like 150 challenges spread across these games. Each game has like a certain number of challenges. I don't think that's enough. I think if you're not worried about these online leaderboards, which again is very limited, it's just those ones each week that they choose, then you blow through those challenges pretty quickly, and then there's just not a whole lot to do with this game.
Yeah.
And so like it sort of needs more games. And the other thing, you were talking about NES remix. I guess part of my thought is, well, why not bring some of that into this game? Like, why isn't there, like, what this game really needs, it sort of needs, it needs to be a WarioWare game. Like, it needs a mode where these challenges are just coming up one after another. And it'll be challenges that I've done before, but also it might be a twist on one of the challenges, right? So, like, why not have one where it inverts, the layout so that, instead of going to the left to get the morph ball, I have to go to the right to get the morph ball, right? And why doesn't it, like, that's the sort of stuff that NES Remix did really well. And I think, like, for longevity of the game, more of that would actually be really fun in it.
I think making those challenges last a week as well is a little long. Because that's one of those things, you boot it up on Monday, you do whatever the 5 challenges are, and then I guess I'm just thinking like, well, I don't need to play this for another week. I think that's one of those things that you could probably do that, just make it 3 new games every single day.
Right.
And some people aren't going to get to play it every day. That's probably fine.
Yeah.
But it guarantees you something new when you boot it up. Because I know if after I finish all of the individual challenges, I do the challenge mode. Yeah, if that's Tuesday, I'm going to feel like I don't have any reason to play this until next Sunday. And I mean, that's nice that I'm going to come back to it next Sunday or next Monday or whatever. But I think that's going to make it, because eventually you're going to miss 1 week and then you're never going to play it again, right?
I think the idea is that you will spend that week working on those individual challenges, cutting that 10th of a second off or that 100th of a second. But again, that's a very limited audience.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was cutting you off.
No, go ahead. What are you?
Do we know how the ghost data works? Like, is it taking all potential attempts or is it just taking everybody's best time? Because that's the other thing, right? If I am in a lobby and I'm racing, like live racing against everybody's best time, that to me also makes it really difficult, because you mess up in your one game and everybody else has whatever their best time is. That's going to probably make it really difficult to either get the win that you're looking for or, so I don't know. I don't think that's the biggest of deals. Like, it, sure, pushes you to be better, but it's hard when you are the one that is having to do it live, when you're having to go up against everybody's best possible run.
It's not their best possible. It's whatever they did in playing that particular mode. So, like, what it does is it records your time running in that mode. So not like what you've done. So it basically gives you one opportunity to do the run, right? So, like, if you've practiced at that particular challenge, then maybe you can replicate it really well. But if it's one of those things you can only do 1 out of 100 times, then you might not have that perfect time. But anyways, all that's to say, like, this is a $30 package. So it's actually, if they were charging a full $60, this would be an insane sort of value. At $30, I think it becomes a more reasonable value. More than anything, this is sort of just disappointing of what this could be. Part of this is the problem is Nintendo and their sort of attitude towards online in games. Part of it is this is Nintendo being overly precious with these old games, which, like, limits them from, like, say, putting the full Kid Icarus on here so you can just do, practice speed running and everything. Part of it is I think Nintendo just a lot of times doesn't get stuff. Like, Nintendo oftentimes feels like it's very siloed off and isn't paying attention to what anybody else is doing in video games.
Yeah.
And you're like, Nintendo, just look, these people are doing this exact same thing and they're doing it better already. Why don't you just copy them? And Nintendo's like, nope.
We do our own thing.
Yeah. And it oftentimes, like, you mentioned Super Mario Maker, when that game first came out, like, that game was so disappointing in a lot of ways because, like, there was no way to search for those levels. There was like no sort of way to filter out levels and say, well, I want levels that are, Super Mario World based and that are like, like super hard level difficulty and all that. And that was like ridiculous. Like people had to go build websites to help you do that.
Yep.
And so that's sort of my reaction. So like for $30, it's not a terrible value. If that sounds like fun to you, like I think you can have fun with it. I have had fun with it, but it is not, my reaction to it was just constantly going, well, I wish they had done this. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's move on over into the news. The big news that just broke yesterday, SAG-AFTRA has the video game voice and performance actors have went on strike as of, I think it was midnight last night. The big sticking point seems to be artificial intelligence. So apparently like having a sort of limit placed on game developers and like how they can use artificial intelligence with the performance and the voice acting of these professional actors in their games. So this basically means professional voice actors cannot work in video games until this strike is over. If we went back 15 years, this would not be much of an issue because you didn't often have professional voice actors in video games. But, these days, I feel like most, certainly AAA video games have professional voice actors.
Yeah, and some of them have reached like pretty high profile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have like Hollywood actors being, put into these games.
Yeah. So
I'm always impressed whenever there's a Nintendo Direct or a PlayStation Showcase, and they'll show the trailer, and I'll be watching with somebody, or they'll just be like, "Oh, that's so and so. They did the voice of this person in this game," and I'm just like, "I don't know how you know this, but that's pretty incredible." But it goes to show like how, obviously respected, but like admired, certain voice actors are for what they're able to do.
The guy who played Kratos,
was Judge.
Yes.
I can't think of
Christopher Judge.
Christopher Judge.
Yes.
Like, and that's not surprising.
Not Mike Judge.
That would be. That's the mod we need.
I just imagine like Hank Hill's voice.
Bobby, I tell you what, we're gonna have to kill that Griffin.
I was like, Hank Hill to Bobby is basically Kratos to Atreus.
and he knows because he wrote the thesis.
But no, I think that's.
I would play that game.
That's
It's all these like buff bodies, and then you've got like Hank Hill dad bod. I live. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay.
Crash what you were
Atreus
saying.
with Atreus learning how to fight, and you get that's my purse.
Yeah. Or him just randomly going into the dandy.
Pocket sand. Please continue, Mario.
No. Anyways, I was just going to
Derailed.
say, like, it's not surprising how respected and admired by the fans these performers are. So I'm glad to see that they're.
Personally,
stand.
it's because it made such a difference when they started using quality voice actors.
Oh, sure.
Because it made like immersing in the narrative so much easier because it wasn't. I watch a lot of bad horror games, and a lot of times they rely on the AI, or they just hire voice actors that are like, "Hey, you from accounting, come in here and read these lines." It makes such a huge difference that yes, you're absolutely right. Of course, people are like, "Oh, these are beloved. Like, we need to keep these." I also think it helps maybe legitimize video games as like art form / like. Art form may be the word I'm trying to use. Anyway.
Well, it's like, I think one of the best stories. I know we've talked about it before, especially, Justin, you've brought it up in terms of like, so-and-so from accounting, come do this. I think my favorite is, I believe it's the original Shenmue, when they got the, voice actors to do, the English lines to that game. they didn't get it based on their ability to speak English. They got it based off of how well they looked like they could speak English. And so you get some of the voice acting in that game is incredible. Anyways, the professionals are quite good at it.
Yeah.
Says so much about Shenmue.
Yeah. Yu Suzuki, come out with Shenmue 4.
But yeah, I mean, like, you're absolutely right. And, I use that joke a lot because it literally was like getting somebody from accounting to like, hey, come up here and we need you to record a voice because we've already all done voices for this game. And I think you're right, Christina, that like when you play a game now, how often, like when's the last time you can remember playing a video game and a voice took you out of the game? Like, and I'm not saying like some people aren't better than others. They definitely are. But like you play video games now and it's very rare that somebody just completely pulls you out of the game because they sound so miscast and so out of place in it.
Unless you're playing one of those indie games where it's
Right.
obvious they don't have the budget for it. Outside of that, like sometimes I play those indie games just for those moments.
Right.
Because they're really laughable. But especially with like the bigger games. And I would say, especially with the games like the Dead by Daylight one that's about to come out, the Quarry, the
Frank Stone.
Dark
Frank
Anthology
Stone,
or
yes,
something
yeah,
like that.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking of. The Dark Anthology series type games that rely so much more on narrative than gameplay. That if they had awful, like even sometimes when the actors maybe don't get a certain line out, like it's laughable because again you're so immersed in that storyline, and that's really the basis of that game.
Yeah. I mean, and when we were talking about professional voice actors, right, we're not saying everybody has to be like an A-level, A-lister actor, right? Like Christopher Judge is not an A-list actor. Like Christopher Judge is best known for Stargate, the series, right? Like he's at best like maybe a sort of C-list actor.
Yeah.
Like nothing against him, but like he was
such an iconic voice.
His biggest role is God of War.
Yeah,
At this
I
point in
would
time.
say.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But like he's so good in that
Yeah.
role,
Yes.
right? And like you were mentioning, Until Dawn, right? Like those sorts of games. Like, and they have Hayden Panettiere
Yes.
is one of the voices, and Rami Malek before he hit
before
big.
he blew up.
And you're like, okay, well, Hayden Panettiere isn't like not the biggest actress in the world, but she's a completely like capable actress, right? And like you, at no point listening to her do you go, ooh, like you don't cringe up or anything. And yeah, it definitely helps that immersion.
Yeah.
So there have already been comments from some people in the industry saying, hey, this is definitely going to affect the release date of our game.
For sure.
They're not going to just suddenly say, okay, like Bill from accounting, come back up here. We're going to use you. Like this is going to mean now the positive thing I think we can say about this is if this doesn't last a really long time, this is the last thing that game developers generally do is the voice acting and everything, right? Now they are also noting like performance. So like the Uncharted games, like Nolan North and the other actors in that game, they're not just doing the voice acting. They often bring them in for motion capture.
Yeah.
So like they're also talking about that. This applies to that. But the voice acting is usually one of the last parts a game does. So we'll see how this goes. Obviously, the film strike that they had last year lasted several months. So hopefully this is resolved much more quickly. But continuing to talk a bit about workers' rights and everything in the video game industry, Bethesda and Blizzard have both formed unions at their development studios. So there's been in the past some unionization among Q&A developers at different studios, including at Bethesda. But like now they're actually the actual game developers are unionizing at Bethesda and Blizzard, particularly Blizzard, the World of Warcraft team. So my understanding is this is not all of Blizzard. It is specifically the team that works on World of Warcraft. They have both voted to form unions. Obviously, Bethesda is owned by Microsoft. Microsoft has said that they are very pro-union. Like they want to accept these unions, and they're not going to fight it. This is partly because of that Activision deal, and they are worried about the.
I was about to say, like, how many weeks? Almost every week since I've been a part of the podcast, we've talked about layoffs.
Right.
And so this is not a surprising move to me at all.
Yeah, I mean, like with Q&A developers, traditionally that's been a really kind of shitty job in the industry. Those people are treated pretty horribly. So them unionizing certainly makes a huge difference. But you talking about all the layoffs, this makes a big difference even in the development teams. Yep. And, and something that we have talked about a lot in the past, we haven't talked about as much recently, but like that idea of crunch. That people are working 60, 80-hour weeks in the final months or final year of a game's development. So a lot of these studios coming out and saying, hey, we want to unionize, and that's got to be, some of the big sticking points towards unionization is like, hey, we need more manageable work-life balances. The video game industry, people outside the video game industry who don't really follow it probably don't realize or think about this, but this is one of those industries, much like Hollywood, where people are so desperate to get into it that people open themselves up to abuse a lot of times. Yep. And not because they're dumb or, anything, but they're so desperate to get a foot in the door that they'll sort of allow themselves to be taken advantage of sometimes. And so a union is great in this, in that it hopefully protects those people. Yeah. Let's see. San Diego Comic-Con is going on this weekend. And so there was a statue of the Kain from, which character is it? The Soul Reaver character. I can't think of his name now. But anyways, there was a statue of the character from the Soul Reaver games. And next to it was a placard that said, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 remastered. This is something that has not been announced, but has been sort of speculated that this might be happening. So this seems to be a clear indication that this is happening, and kind of got leaked, I guess. There's still not as we're recording this, not an official announcement of this remastering. I really liked Soul Reaver 1. I don't think I ever played part 2, but I played part 1 on the Dreamcast. I thought that was a really fun game. The original Legacy of Kain, I really liked. That was speaking of adult sort of Zelda games, that was an adult Zelda game where you played as a vampire and had to kill people. So a very very mature take on the Zelda formula for that time on the PlayStation 1. Let's see. Tesla has apparently paid Epic to put the Cybertruck in Fortnite, which is sort of funny to begin with. But what has been really funny is that Fortnite players have decided to target anyone who gets in the Cybertruck and drives it. So have been posting onto social media and message boards for the game to, if you see anybody in here, kill them immediately. Which, I think says a lot about kind of the public feeling towards Tesla and the Cybertruck in general.
Honestly, I love it.
Has there ever been a vehicle so hated as the Cybertruck? Just out of the gate.
Right? I'm just thinking, because I'm now the Ford Bronco has a particular connotation to it. Right. But people honestly like it or hate it. I can't think of any.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Pontiac Aztec was one of those that people kind of joked about because it has a funny look. And same thing with the PT Cruiser when it came out. People, but that felt very some people. It was sort of the hipster thing to make fun of it, but some people really liked those and drove them. But I feel outside of the people who are plunking down $100,000 to buy a Cybertruck, everyone else is mocking them at this point. Mario, you were out in San Francisco. Did you see Cybertrucks?
I did. I think I saw maybe two or three, and I had never seen one before. I was at the Giants game, and one pulled out, and I was like, oh, all right.
I got on a weird side of TikTok briefly where people were putting the what is it? The covers, but it's not called that.
The vinyl wrap?
Yeah, on their Cybertrucks. And one of them was like this bright, like iridescent pink. And I was like, making it Barbie does not make your Cybertruck cool.
Like Barbie would not drive the Cybertruck.
She would not. It is representative of the patriarchy.
Or the only reason Barbie would drive a Cybertruck is that the way it's designed looks like it could fit her body because it like bends in half and like.
Because it looks like a truck that I drew when I was like in kindergarten.
I remember people saying it looks like a Lego truck.
Yes.
And that is what I always think when I look at them. Like, this looks like the truck I built out of Legos when I was a kid.
Which honestly makes sense that Elon Musk would be the one to be like, you know, it would be cool.
You know, I cannot draw. I should not be the one designing vehicles.
Right.
And so I think you have to know what your limitations are in life. So, anyways, let's see. WB Games has acquired Player First Games. These are the makers of Multiverses.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. It's kind of interesting because WB is slashing everything else. Warner Brothers is slashing everything else. They're firing employees. They're talking about potentially selling off different units of the company. They seem to be, they just lost the rights to the NBA, which is like a huge disaster. Everybody's sort of mocking them over. And it's sort of weird to hear them acquiring game developers because it was just, in the last year or so that people were pretty certain they were going to sell off their game, teams. And so the last thing I kind of expected was for them to get, bringing in new teams, buying new teams. I mean, I think you're right. It makes sense. Multiverses is theoretically one of their, big outlets for a game studio, but
maybe a sort of a last ditch effort type of thing.
Maybe so.
Put all of our eggs into this basket, and if it hits, then we're good. But
they're the only big studio who's having any success in game development. I mean, everybody else has basically gotten out of game development. I mean, at least internal development, right? Like Disney has games, but they farm those all out to third parties.
Yeah, because I have to imagine WB probably made or has some hand in Hogwarts Legacy.
That's an internal team that does that. Yeah, and so that, obviously, the Mortal Kombat games.
Sure.
That's them as well. At one point they were making the Lego games, but I think that license is outside now. Kind of interesting. Let's see. Nintendo has vacated Team Jackpot's Splatoon 3 World Championship. So Team Jackpot, they recently held this Splatoon 3 World Championship. Team Jackpot won this. Nintendo has now vacated it because video has come out of members of that team using racist language. I have not actually watched this video. Apparently it is like it's not like they dropped the use of one word. It is apparently an extended multiple offenses situation. This alone isn't that interesting. What I think is really kind of interesting about this is Major League Baseball would never vacate, the Dodgers championship, right? Like, what would it take for them to vacate the championship of a winning team? And if a video came out of players on the Dodgers in the clubhouse using racist language, Major League Baseball may fine the team, they may fine those players, but they would not vacate a championship.
Yeah, I mean, I know they called for it for the Astros, and they didn't do it for the Astros when they had their cheating
That was when they were
allegations.
cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is really interesting from that perspective, right? So like in esports, these sorts of things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think some of this happened with some of the Pokemon championships when there were like players were defecating in the hotel and other things, and they like removed some of the wins from people in those tournaments. I know Evo has done some stuff like this with bad behavior of players.
I think the closest thing I can think of would be Penn State when all the Jerry Sandusky, Joe Paterno stuff came out. They, I believe, just wiped like all of those records and stuff like that.
It has happened in college sports.
Yeah, I think USC with all the Reggie Bush stuff.
Yeah.
Although I think they actually just reinstated his Heisman.
Yeah. But they have done this in the past with some college teams when there were scandals that came out about paying players and that sort of thing. Yeah, you're right. College level, we do see this, not at the professional level.
Yeah, I don't know about professional. I wouldn't be. I'm sure it has happened, but I can't think of anything.
The
off
Black
the top of my head.
Sox.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, anyways, the point being that I think this is interesting to see Nintendo taking such a hard line approach to this. And I think it's good, like get these assholes out of here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody wants them around, and like they should face stiff consequences. But I think it says a lot about these tournaments, these championships are still very much PR vehicles.
Yeah.
Like
what I was thinking about in all of this is Nintendo kind of reminds me of Disney in the way that they're super protective of their brand and how they're portrayed. And so
Absolutely.
To me, anything that steps outside a particular line, and it also makes sense that these two companies are that way, because we've often talked in here about how what kind of sets Nintendo apart is that they are more family friendly. They tend to have, they market more towards families, especially more so than like PlayStation and Xbox. And so it's like they have to be more protective of their brand so that they can, maintain it for those purposes, because parents are can be ridiculous, right? Justifiably. But so it's interesting the way that those two companies sort of parallel each other in the way that they take care of what gets said or anything that could represent them, basically.
Yeah, the other thing I think is kind of interesting about this is these guys know like that this is going out publicly. Like they did this on a live stream.
They did it on Discord. Like there was a lot of stuff on Discord and X too that was there so that they could, that was easily trackable online.
So this is not like something... This is not like somebody was hanging out with these guys at their house and had a hidden tape recorder or something, right? Mm-hmm. Like these guys are doing this in a very public fashion. How do they not know that this is inappropriate behavior? And one of the things you look at streamers and you look at, the big streamers, people like PewDiePie and Dr. Disrespect, and they are doing a lot of this sort of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like using this kind of casually racist, homophobic, misogynist language. And so I think you have a generation of players who have grown up watching these streamers who in a lot of cases just seem to think like that's acceptable behavior because like the biggest streamers are doing this.
Yeah.
If not on a daily basis, at least on a semi-regular basis.
And if you don't know that for sure, play Fortnite and get like a child like on the thing. Like I hate playing with other people or getting dropped into whatever because they have worse mouths than I do. And I have to like be very careful on this podcast not to say too many things. And it's just,
Well, and it's like that was always kind of talked about as like a joke of, when people say, about like the, I don't know, PC culture or whatever, and like, oh, you wouldn't have lasted a day on the Xbox Live voice chat, and it's like, that's not something to be proud of.
Right.
Just like the openly racist and vitriolic things that people would say.
Yeah,
on those channels.
A lot of the stuff in my TikTok, there's two in particular, of like lady gamers who play like Call of Duty, and one of them is also queer and has like a little rainbow flag next to her name, and she constantly gets called a dyke and all of these other things. And then the other woman like also gets a lot of stuff, and I mean both of them, the whole point of the video is that they end up then whooping up on the guys, right? But the stuff that just gets thrown at them is ridiculous.
And that it's so common, right? Like this is not like a one-time thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure these women have experienced, right?
For sure.
And so, like you mentioned Xbox Live, and I remember the early days of Xbox Live, there was a very different tone to it. And I'm not going to say you didn't encounter any of this stuff, but like there was much more of, hey, we're all just hanging out playing video games.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it seems like over time, it's gotten to the point where like I just turn voice chat off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I don't engage with voice chat. And when Xbox Live first started, I would be on there talking to people, complete strangers,
And
you'd have occasional jerk, but like most people behaved.
And like I expect there to be a certain level of shit talking. Like I certainly do it, like even when I'm playing teams, like with Dead by Daylight and stuff.
Sure.
But when it goes into like attacking people for whatever reason, and saying the racist bullshit, like
there's I feel like a very clear line between like shit talking and like, oh, you're just shitty.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
I mean, there's the difference between Halo, where people would, come up and like hump you after they killed you.
Sure.
And like people using like this sort of offensive, abusive language.
Yeah. I have teabagged many a killer.
I mean, that doesn't offend me in a game, right? It's sort of goofy and everything.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, maybe that's difficult to explain to an 8-year-old
fair.
if they're playing, but like,
it's annoying. It's like trolly, but at the same time,
do I hate that
right.
I do it? Yeah. But do I still do it? Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's very different. And so I do sort of wonder, like, we see this happen. I feel like there's one of these stories every few months that comes out of a tournament where somebody has done something really sort of reprehensible. And I just wonder if it's because that is so much the culture with video games these days, like especially online, like streaming and, competitive and everything, that these people just don't know any better. Like, I mean, you sort of think like, well, obviously you should know better in your day-to-day life. And maybe it's a bigger issue. Maybe it's because, not to get super political, but like we have presidential candidates who are saying this sort of stuff, like, and it gets shown on the news with often zero commentary attached to it.
Right.
But it's weird.
Yeah. And I think, it's one of those things that whenever, we talk about a story like this, or I see a story like this, at like first instance, it's almost hard to believe because like the groups that I've, been a part of for however many years now, I don't know, like there's never been, and maybe it's just like, or the communities that I've been a part of, whether they be like smaller, more like closer friendships, or even like the bigger streamers, that doesn't seem to be their community. But then I also see those streamers make a very explicit effort to shut those things down if they do ever come up. Or he will make it clear, if I'm talking like this, it's because I know the person that I am talking to.
Yeah.
So like there's a different line in like what is acceptable for me to say to this person or this person to say to me, but you as a stranger are not allowed to say this to me. And I would never say anything like that to you.
Yeah.
And so I think it like, there's this perception, like almost like this like molding of perception within those communities of like, this is why this is not okay. This is why this is okay.
Right.
But those are not universal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, I thought it was kind of an interesting story just because it did bring up those two sort of like juxtapositions about.
And also the last thing, good on Nintendo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
we've talked about it, and I think, in this comparison to Disney, they do have a lot of like very conservative practices. And I think that's part, what you're saying of like in terms of protecting that image. But I'd say good on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, conservative, but conservative in a not
In a
in the way that
business-
we
in a
talk of,
business way, yeah.
not in the way we think of politically.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they have those as well, but they
To
don't.
some extent, potentially. But
Yeah.
no, when I said, in terms of like business practices.
Speaking of Nintendo, after our last episode, I think maybe we did our last episode like the day before the Nintendo Direct happened. Nintendo had their big Nintendo Direct, Summer Direct. And I just want to kind of run through here real quick because they announced some new things that were pretty interesting. They showed off Mario and Luigi Brothership. So this is a new game in the, it's a great subtitle, Brothership.
Yeah.
This is a new game in the Mario and Luigi series. This came out of nowhere. I don't think anybody was calling for this to happen. So that looks pretty neat. They showed off some more of Dragon Quest III HD 2D. That's that new remake in the sort of tilt shift style of several of Square's recent games and everything. And then as part of that, they announced that they're also remaking 1 and 2 as a combination package, which makes sense. Like Dragon Quest 1 is a very short game in the grand scheme of things. It's a very small game. So combining that into 3 is coming out first, 1 and 2 will come out later, but that actually makes sense because 3 is the prequel to 1 and 2. So they're releasing them sort of in chronological order. They announced a new Zelda game, Echoes of Wisdom, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and the big cool thing about this is it's the first Zelda game where you play as Princess Zelda.
Second Zelda game. Let us not forget the CDI Zelda game. Just saying.
Or let us.
Let us not forget, was it Wand of Gamelon? Is that the one that you play as Zelda?
I don't know which one you play as. I thought Zelda is like Zelda's something.
Yeah,
But
I
anyways.
forget the different subtitles. Anyways, yes. Let us forget the CDI Zelda games.
No.
So this is the first Nintendo-made Zelda game where you will play as Princess Zelda. And so their sort of like twist on this is that instead of having a sword and a shield like Link, she has a magic wand that lets her duplicate items. So like they show her copying a chair and then like making another chair and stacking them up so that you can climb up to different areas. You can also create clones of enemies. And so then those enemies will fight for you against the other enemies. So, I think two things. One, it's cool that you get to play as Zelda. Two, is really cool that they figured a way to like bring something innovative. So it's not just a palette swap for Link, right? Like they're going to give her own style of gameplay. And I'll say, like, I'm actually really excited about this game.
Yeah.
Like, if you had told me, like, you're going to come out this really excited for a Nintendo game, I didn't think they'd have anything cool to show. And I came away from that Zelda game like, yes, I want to play this. I will play this game when it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, we can finish talking about. I was shocked in terms of like the amount of things that they announced. I was thinking like, here's how we limp out of the Switch era. Maybe we get like the not Skyward Sword, like the Twilight Princess and Wind Waker
we
remakes.
even talked about that though on the last one, like on our predictions for what they were going to do. Oh, they're just going to, tearfully say goodbye to the Switch.
We might get, I know I said we might get a remake. We might get a couple of like reissues of games. I was like, we'll get a GameCube remake. It'll be great. And and then they start the show with that Brothership. And I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
like
that was,
that's a big game coming out this fall. Who would have expected that? And then they announced that Zelda game. I was like, that's even bigger. Like, wow. And the thing that I think is really kind of interesting is when they announced the Nintendo World Championships, I know on this podcast I said, I'm surprised they didn't save that for their Direct, because what else do they have coming out this year? And of course, Nintendo proved me wrong and had plenty to show.
Yeah.
Let's see. They showed off first gameplay for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. This was a game that, I, for one, kind of expected that game was going to slip to the Switch 2. This still might be their sort of cross-generation game like they've done with the Zelda games the last 2 console generations.
That's my expectation.
Yeah.
But them showing it at this show seems to indicate a version of this game will come out for the current Switch. And that game looked neat. Like, it looked good. Apparently that is running off of the Metroid Prime remastered engine.
Oh, cool.
So, kind of has that look to it. They announced a new Super Mario Party game, Super Mario Party Jamboree. Looks like a Mario Party game.
Yeah.
I know people who were pretty excited about it. I think specifically because there's new stuff.
Right.
There are new mini games.
That last one was sort of a best of collection.
And so I think it's sort of a best of both worlds. You're getting some old stuff, but you're getting some new stuff. And so I have a group of friends who they play Mario Party, just on a random evening, pretty regularly. And so they were pretty excited.
It looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the biggest Mario Party fan, but it looked good. And then the last thing that wasn't actually a Nintendo game, but was pretty neat, they announced Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics, which is the most convoluted title in the world. But this is taking all of the Marvel and Capcom fighting games. So this is Street Fighter versus X-Men. This is X-Men Children of the Atom. This is Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2. I am forgetting some games in there. It also has the Punisher side-scroller beat-em-up thrown in there, which is kind of like a weird bonus into that mix. I'm not the biggest fighting game fan, but that Punisher game is pretty cool. And this is kind of neat because they're doing rollback netcode for all these games. There has not been a convenient way to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for a lot of players in this modern age. And so, that is still a very beloved. We've had 2 more Marvel vs. Capcom games since that one. That is still the one that everybody loves and goes back to. So getting that in a new package that's, coming out on the Switch, but also is obviously coming out on PC and Xbox, or not Xbox and PlayStation, is not getting released on Xbox. Xbox fans were quite upset about that.
And to do justice to Alicia, they also announced the Ace Attorney Investigations.
Oh.
Those 2 games are getting remastered as well, which I think one of them had never been brought to the U.S. I think there was only ever a fan translation.
Yeah, I think that's right. So they're bringing those out. So new Ace Attorney game, sort of.
Yeah, it's a spinoff, but if you like those characters, which a lot of people do, I mean, it's a first time. Most people will probably get to play that second one. And I think the only other thing that I want to talk about, just thinking about what the expectation going in was, the other game that they announced that it felt disappointing, which is probably not fair because this is what I was expecting to begin with, was the Donkey Kong Country Returns is getting a remaster.
Right.
And so it's that was the expectation.
Right.
And that was well, I guess. And so I mean, I know I just said good on Nintendo, but I was very impressed with what they announced during this Direct.
Yeah, that Donkey Kong Country Returns remaster, remake, whatever they're calling it, almost came off as disappointing.
Yeah.
But only in the context of everything else they showed and announced, because that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sure,
playing that out. A lot of people, that is their favorite.
3DS? Regular DS?
It was originally the Wii, and then it got a port to the DS or the 3DS.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it was originally Wii. So that was a game that that was the level I was expecting.
Yeah.
Right? When this direct got announced. And so if that's the worst thing that came out of it, and I don't mean that disparagingly, that's a very good game.
Yeah.
But if that's the least thing that got announced.
It was a lot bigger than we all anticipated, definitely.
There's a world where I could have seen that being the biggest thing that they announced.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Outside of maybe like a, one big thing to where this is our transition game into the next thing.
Right. Like if they had had that in the Marvel vs. Capcom collection and Super Mario Party, you would have been like, yeah, that's about what I expected.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think of these, the one I'm probably the most excited for is Mario and Luigi. That's a franchise that I really adore. That first game, I have so much nostalgia for playing it on the Game Boy. So I know the last couple have been kind of meh, but I'm very, very much looking forward to that one.
It's also a franchise that I think a lot of people thought was dead because the developer of those games, Nintendo let them go out of business.
Oh, wow.
They did that remake on the 3DS. It was the remake of Bowser's Inside Story, I believe.
Yes.
And they put it out right as the Switch was coming out. And so like nobody was buying 3DS games because everybody was switching over to Switch. And that game bombed. And they were an independent studio. They weren't owned by Nintendo. And Nintendo apparently kind of went to Nintendo. Was like, hey, can you help us? And Nintendo was like, no. And kind of let them die. And so everybody kind of thought, well, that's it. Like that franchise is dead.
Yeah, I know they did the Superstar Saga and like Bowser Jr. story remake on the Switch. That I think is the most recent iteration, but I think the most recent new game, I couldn't even tell you. That was, I think, Dream Team, and that was on the 3DS.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. So, but yeah, very excited. But a ton to be excited about for sure.
So after this, like a week or two after this, Nintendo put out a weird teaser trailer that was a guy with a paper bag over his head with a smiley face drawn on it. And then at the end of it, it had an M rating for mature. So Nintendo does not put out mature rated games. I think somebody checked and they've put out like 7 M rated games in the history of Nintendo that are first party published, not third party, not like counting Mortal Kombat and stuff. We're thinking of you, OJ. But like they do not put out a lot of these games. And so there was quite a bit of speculation about what this game might be. That speculation was quickly put to an end when it was shown that it is a game called the Smiling Man Famicom Detective Club. So the Famicom Detective Club, as the name implies, were games for the original Famicom, which we know as the NES here. They never got US releases until the Switch, in which they went back and translated those games and did updates, new graphics and stuff for them, and have put them out on the Switch. This is a wholly new game in that franchise, which is kind of weird to even call a franchise because it's been dead for 40 years. And they're putting out this entirely new game. It's about a serial killer. That's why there's the M rating on it. And those games are sort of visual novels. They're sort of precursors to, the Phoenix Wright games. So maybe this is something Alicia will be into. I don't know. That's kind of neat though to see Nintendo, reviving that franchise and putting out a new entry and
yeah, absolutely
letting them do something kind of edgy with it. Maybe the thought is, how do we get people excited about Famicom Detective Club? And
yeah.
I mean, again, those dark anthology things are popular, which are not necessarily visual novels per se, but it's in the, I would say it's in the same genre umbrella.
They're adventure games.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So
right. Well, I think just from the way that you've described them, they're very narrative heavy.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like the story is more impactful than the gameplay, which I think probably tends to be the case with a lot of the visual novels as well. You're playing those for the story.
For sure.
Let's see. This is kind of follow up. We did a story about how Nintendo was interested in adding more women to their board of directors. They have added 3 more women to the board of directors. They originally added 1 woman and then said we want to add more. They now also have more female managers than ever before in their history. So not just at the board of directors level, but managers working within the company. They have edited their annual report, which has been a particular section that has been static for years, and they put an emphasis on, regardless of reaching out to a diversity of players, regardless of gender in game design. And so when they added the 1 person to their board of directors, the 1 woman, we kind of talked about, they said they were interested in adding more women. We talked about on the podcast at that time, maybe this is the reason we're seeing games like Princess Peach, right? Like that, when you have more women in the company, women start to say, hey, why don't we do stuff with our female characters? Why don't we make games that maybe target female players first? And then so we get this news around the same time, right, that we get a Zelda game where Zelda is the main character.
Yeah.
Oh, man. The amount of women I saw who were thrilled with that announcement was, again, it's hard to say that that's exactly what it is, but it's also not hard to make that connection between the two.
Especially, I think, when you see the more female managers than they've ever had, right? So it's not just at the very top. It is the people who are like working day to day on these games.
Throughout, yeah.
And that's great. Like, I mean, good. Like, if you're going to make a new Zelda game this quick, right? Like, they could have just made a standard Zelda game, just another one in that style, and everybody would have been happy. But the fact that they're doing something kind of, new and creative with it is really exciting.
And with it being Zelda, you know how much like care and consideration is going to go into it. This is not like a throwaway project. If it were like a brand new IP, where like if it hits, great. If it doesn't, oh well.
Yeah.
But like as a Zelda game, I assume there's going to be a lot of care put into a project like that.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about the Princess Peach game felt like maybe kind of like a one-off, like that, are they thinking of this as the beginning of a new franchise or something? And it felt like, well, maybe they're just doing this as a one-off experiment. Doing this with Zelda feels more like, hey, how can we diversify this franchise? Like, not just in who's playing it or who the character is, but like, how can we diversify the gameplay and the way people might interact with these games?
And I imagine the stories they're able to tell as well.
Yeah. Let's see. Paramount Plus has canceled their Halo series after 2 seasons. So, no more John Halo's butt.
Oh, no.
Look, I'm going to tell you, OJ was very excited about John Halo's butt. And I'm only repeating that because he said it on this podcast.
I'm not surprised. I would have guessed that OJ would be the biggest fan of the Halo tush, but like the Fallout series was really great. It like got nominated for a bunch of Emmys, and I don't care about the Halo.
I watched the first season of that Halo show. It was pretty bad. It was bad enough I had no interest in watching the second season.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me was wondering if this was like and no offense to Paramount Plus, I don't think of that as being one of the bigger streaming services. And so I thought maybe just not enough eyes got on it. But if you also didn't think it was very good.
It has RuPaul. That's the only reason I have it. So the gays. Oh, Halo butt.
Well, for a second,
it sounds like they found their audience.
For a second, when you said that it has RuPaul, I was like, the Halo show had RuPaul? It's like, that was a weird episode.
No. Paramount Plus is for the gays. And so they have, Halo tush and RuPaul.
Xbox and Amblin Entertainment, which was involved in the production of this show, have said they are going to try to shop it around. there are those cases, right? The Karate Kid, Cobra Kai series, like started off on YouTube as a series, and then never really found much of an audience. And then when it went to Netflix, it exploded in popularity. So there are those cases. Having just watched the first season, that first season's so bad. Like even if you put this on Netflix, I don't think it's going to find an audience.
I mean, they're probably non-video game people trying to sell video games at a time where they see things like Fallout go big and The Last of Us and things like that, and not realize that they are not holding the same thing.
Yeah, I also just feel like Halo does not hold the same sort of cultural weight as it once did.
It doesn't, but like also like, what do you want out of a Halo show?
Yeah.
And like what I want out of a Halo show, I don't want a Halo show. I want a Halo movie. It needs to be like a $300 million summer blockbuster.
Like James Cameron.
Yeah, like James Cameron's absolutely the right kind of director, right? Big, bombastic action throughout. And this was a show where, you know, people sat around and talked a lot. And the guy talked about his dog and, you know, like...
And then he took his pants off. Like, I'm kidding.
Not related to the dog talk. Look, this isn't JD Vance. Like,
oh no.
So, you know, this is. It was just like it felt like people made the show who did not understand the appeal of the game.
Yeah.
And so, it was just actually not that interesting to watch.
For sure.
It was a slog to get through. Let's see. Speaking of Xbox, they announced changes to the Xbox Game Pass tiers. I'm going to run through this very quickly because this is very convoluted, and that's part of the problem, I think, with it all. So Game Pass Ultimate is going from $16.99 a month to $19.99 a month. Game Pass Standard is going to be a new tier. It is $14.99 a month, but there will be no day one releases on it. They said it can be up to a year or more before games will come to that now. So,
for $5.
Yeah, well, so the incentive is if you're going to spend the $15, go ahead and spend the extra $5 and you'll get those day one releases. You'll also note that this is happening now in July. I believe it's September that the new Call of Duty game is going to come out. That's going to be a day one release on Game Pass, but it won't be on that $15 tier. You have to go up to that $20 tier. So this is very much a way to incentivize people to upgrade. Let's see, Xbox Game Pass Core, which is what used to be called Xbox Live Gold. Now it's called Xbox Game Pass Core. That change happened a couple years ago, I believe. That is going to be $9.99 a month, but it allows you to play games online, and it's going to have a collection. This has already been done, but a collection of about 25 or so games that you can access through that. It won't have the full Game Pass library. Xbox PC Game Pass is $9.99 a month. It's going up to $11.99. It only lets you play games on PC, not on the Xbox console. It will continue to include those day one releases, though. So you will still get, theoretically, Call of Duty and, you know, Forza and all of those the day they come out. Xbox Game Pass for consoles, which is $10.99 a month, is going away. So they're going to get rid of it entirely. It gave you the full Game Pass library, but did not include online play. It's going away for everyone except for people who currently are subscribed. It will grandfather them in. They can continue to subscribe to that, but if at any point they let their subscription lapse, then they'll have to go to one of the other tiers. So there will be 4 Game Pass tiers when this is all said and done, which reminds me an awful lot of the PlayStation Plus tiers, which I think there are 3 of those, and I can never keep straight what is what which is which tier and offers which. This feels overly convoluted to me. I don't know how you all feel.
No,
I
I
know
agree.
you are a Game Pass subscriber, Mario.
Yeah, I mean, like the price increase, sure, whatever. It's frustrating, but I can't be surprised. The tiers thing, part of me gets it as like we're offering you options, but part of me is also like you're making this unnecessarily difficult.
Yeah.
Like it's weird to me that they would mirror the PlayStation Plus model when I feel like I don't ever hear anybody talk about the PlayStation Plus model in like a positive way.
Agreed.
Yep.
I feel like you had it. It was working great. I don't know. Maybe their research shows like people want other options or that they don't like paying this much for everything. They would be satisfied if they could pay half of it and just get this. Like, if that's what their research, and I'm sure that obviously they've done it, I would imagine. If that's what it shows, like, hey, if it works for them, great. I don't personally get the decision.
Yeah.
I should also note that Ultimate tier is going to be the only one that does the streaming. Whatever that is called now, Xbox streaming. And so Jess Corden published an article online in which he talked about there are rumors of other like sort of tiers and variations that they might bring into this. And one of those was that they might introduce a tier that is streaming only, would not allow you to download any games, but you would pay and have like the full access to the catalog, but could only stream them. And that'll tie into another story we're going to talk about. But like then one of the other ones was to have some sort of advertising supported tier. So think about something that, you know, when you boot up and want to play one of these games, you might have to watch an advertisement before you're allowed to play it.
Yeah.
And that probably wouldn't be a free tier, but it would be a lower cost. So think of, you know, like Netflix, you can pay, I don't know what, $8 for the ad supported tier, but then it's 15 or more for the ad free tier. So we might see something like that. Those are rumors. Those are things that Jess is reporting were that these are things being considered, talked about behind the scenes, but like no immediate plans. So yeah, and that becomes even more complicated.
Yeah.
I understand it, like, because at some point, I guess the logic is people will get so frustrated, they'll say, well, I'll just get the ultimate.
I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, I don't have to think about it. That gets me everything. But I think there's a certain number of people who go, screw it. Like, I just won't get it. Like, this is too complicated. I don't, you know, you need one of those side-by-side charts that you see on shopping websites where there's a little check mark or the X, like what you get and everything.
Service plan gives you this, and this.
Yeah.
And I think anytime, and that's what PlayStation has.
Yeah.
And I think anytime you get to that, there's a certain segment of the population. I am sort of in that segment of the population that just gets frustrated and says, you know, screw it. Like, I don't want to fool with this. So I think they're dangerously close to that, which is like, you know, maybe not the best thing in the world. Speaking of, I mentioned that potential streaming only tier. I thought this was kind of interesting. This was just in time for Prime Day that Amazon was selling a package. So I think on the last episode we talked about this, that Xbox streaming was coming to the Fire Stick. Amazon was selling a package that was the Fire Stick, the Xbox controller, and I think maybe like 3 months or something of Ultimate as a package together.
Wow.
And selling it, I forgot what it was, $70 or something.
Oh, wow.
You know,
a great deal.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things where you look at it and you go, you know, for streaming to really take off, it needs to be everywhere. But like, it doesn't just need to be everywhere. It needs to be simple enough for somebody to like try it the first time. Right. Like, and you know, I talk about my brother often in these cases that my brother's not the type to go drop $500 on a console, but if he could buy a $50 controller and connect it to his TV, he might play, you know, a few games. Sure. He likes video games. He's just not going to spend $500 on a console to do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can see the like potential advantage there if they can get that out into more things. I think they have to get it beyond just the Fire Stream stick. It has to be on Roku and Apple TV and, you know, all the major boxes. Let's see. 82, a new study came out, said 82% of Americans have made an in-game purchase last year. So 82% of American players who play video games made a in-game purchase last year. Bought some sort of DLC, you know, spent 99 cents to skip an ad in a phone game.
I can see that, honestly. Like, I would even guess that was low. Not by a lot, but...
It's quite a move from, you know, what I always think of Elder Scrolls Horse Armor. Like how furious people were over that. Like that was one of the early big DLC kerfuffles. And like now it's so common that 82%, like you're saying, like your expectation is that's even higher. That it's a huge seismic shift in games.
Because I was like, especially like if they take into consideration mobile games, like how easy is it to be like for 99 cents and be like, for folks who play Dead by Daylight, anytime there's an update that isn't, you know, well, honestly, some of the players that they create, they charge for, but you have to pay for a lot of the new characters to be able to play them.
Yeah, and you know, I have all those skins and stuff like that, and all of those games. I get it, like that. We talked about it, didn't we, in an episode that where some Norwegian or Scandinavian research group found that like that was something that like bullying was,
right? Yeah,
that it was just, it's like these things, these aesthetics matter
for sure
to people and like the joy they get out of the game. So yeah, I'm not surprised that it's as high as it is.
One final detail here I think is kind of interesting, particularly we're talking about what people are willing to pay for games. NCAA Football 25, this is the first college football game in like a decade. Yeah. EA put that out. They put out, along with that, a $100 version of the game, which allowed you to play the game 3 days early. Like basically gave it to you a weekend in advance. They sold that for $100. Over 2 million people paid $100 to play that game 3 days early. Which
people love college football.
Yeah, right.
No, I saw a lot of people playing this. There's so many people who are so excited about this.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's reports that this is going to be a pretty big bump for hardware as well.
Oh, absolutely. There's one of the streamers that I was watching, he was doing online games and he had voice chat with the people he was playing. And there were absolutely people who said they bought their system for this game.
Oh, wow.
And the thing is, this is only on the new consoles. It's not on PC. It's not on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. It is only on the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5.
Yep.
So this is one of those games, like, to play this, you had to buy the next, you know, it's not the next generation anymore. It's the current generation, but you had to upgrade. And we've talked a lot about there hasn't been a whole lot of games that force people to upgrade. Like, you could still be playing your PlayStation 4 and playing your Roblox and, you know, these sorts of common older games, Fortnite and stuff. But I think you're right. Like, this is one of those games that has a die-hard enough of a fan base, right?
Where they're going to buy the hardware, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because you just said it. The last one was 2014 that came out. And so people, and like, there's a, somewhat active like modding group that was like still modding that 2014 game
Sure.
to get like this is what it would be like
current rosters.
essentially current rosters, and like trying to update like statistics to match like this team should be, you know, this is how good this team was in 2014, this is what their like ranking and stuff should be today. And
Yeah.
so yeah, people have waited a really long time, and so I'm really not surprised. I didn't realize that, because I saw people streaming it early. I didn't realize that that's what it was. But yeah.
Yeah, that's what really stood out to me. Like in an age where people are complaining about the cost of games,
Yeah.
Spending $100, $30 more than the base edition to play the game 3 days early is kind of crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but like obviously I am not the key demo for this game. Sure. Not for the $100 version. I may play the game, but not the $100 version.
Right.
All right. That does it for our news. So for this week's big question, we're going to have a series
Justin has 100 of them.
Yeah. We're going to have a series of small questions. Somebody gave me this as a gift. It's a video game trivia. I don't know if there's like a official name. Ultimate Video Game Trivia Quiz Cart. It looked like a Game Boy when you like bought it. Mario is instantly checking. He's trying to cheat.
Yep.
So I have some of these questions I've drawn.
Professor Puzzle Games must be the developer or something.
Yeah, I haven't looked at these. I'm going to quiz Mario and Christina. We'll just see. You can just shout your answer. We don't have buzzers or anything cool here to make this more fair. But we'll just go through like maybe 10 of these and see like who
When
wins.
was this game made?
Yeah. Thank you.
It's pretty up to date.
Okay, I was just saying, it's like
It's
the
pretty.
Atari 2600.
Both of us would be out, honestly.
Well, I think they have some of
I'm
those
sure,
older
sure.
questions, but the first question I'm going to ask is fairly recent.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Okay. What is the full name of the 9-foot, 6-inch tall vampire-like antagonist in Resident Evil Village?
Oh, shit.
If you can just give me the name.
Lady
Dimitrescu.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't know what her full name
That's-
is.
Yeah.
I don't know her
It's
government name.
Lady Alcina,
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
but we'll give that to you. So you got that. Which home console was the first to contain a Blu-ray disc player?
PlayStation 2?
I would say PlayStation 3.
Oh,
PlayStation 3 is
yeah,
correct.
you're right.
Let's see. Which Pokemon photography game was released in April 2021 for the Nintendo Switch?
New Pokemon Snap.
Good, you got the right name. Mm-hmm. I probably wouldn't have gotten the correct name.
I knew Pokemon Snap, but I
Yeah.
was like, did it have a special name? Oh, new Pokemon Snap. Okay.
This is what it is. What do you want, people?
I might have gotten that if I thought about it for a long
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
but like just off the top of my head, I didn't know. I'm going to skip some of these because I think they're too obscure.
Give us one of them.
Who is Professor Layton's apprentice?
Oh, it's like some kid. His name is like Ralphie or something like that. It's probably wrong.
I don't know.
Are you thinking of the kid from A Christmas Story?
Yeah, that's what
I do feel like it's something
Will
like
he
that,
shoot
though.
his eye out? Like,
I can
don't even
picture
know
him.
who
He
Professor
wears
Layton
like
is.
a blue shorts, and like he's got like a blue.
Who's
blazer.
Professor Layton? I don't
He
know.
wears a top hat. It's a
It's
puzzle
like
game.
a DS 3DS
Oh, see.
series.
It's the same people that make the the Phoenix Wright games.
Okay.
They had a
okay.
crossover game.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Maybe it's not the same people.
Luke Triton.
Oh,
sure.
so close. Luke, Ralphie,
Yeah.
same thing.
I didn't think people would get that one. So when I was saying I was skipping it, there was like actually a good reason. Oh man, that's really difficult. This one's actually pretty hard. What was the code name for the Kinect during its development? I don't know if I could have named this off the top of my head. I do recognize it now.
I have no idea.
No idea.
Project Natal.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds familiar. I don't know why I would know that, but it does sound familiar.
It got talked about a lot at the time. Code names for consoles used to be much more like prevalent. People would talk about them, like Dolphin.
Outside of like Dolphin and Revolution, I don't think I know any of them.
Katana was one. Yeah.
Is cuteness? Is that what it? Adorable? Project Adorable? Isn't that? No, that's not what it is. Whatever the new Xbox, that was just the adjective they used to describe. Wasn't that what it is?
Oh yeah, it wasn't adorable. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember what it was.
That was not the code name. It was just an adjective.
So here's a question I feel for our missing team member. Which Batman supervillain attacks and incapacitates Scarecrow in the sewers of the 2009 game Batman Arkham Asylum?
I watched that game being played, but I don't.
The crocodile? That is, isn't there?
Justin's face.
I don't know. Isn't there a crocodile bad guy?
Alicia would be horrified. The crocodile. Killer Croc.
Oh, but you do. Okay. Mario gets that.
I'm getting half credit.
Mario
Show your work next time, but you know what? It's fine.
The tuxedo billionaire. You mean the penguin?
Yes, obviously. You knew who I was talking about.
No, because for that one, it would have been like, what's that bird guy?
Batman?
Honestly, I mean, the only other one I would have gone with was the shark guy. But that's about it. Or the big gorilla. But I know that one. But I also don't know if that's Batman.
If you know that one, what is the name of the
that one's General Grodd.
Yeah, the Gorilla Grodd. Yeah.
Yeah,
Again,
okay.
Alicia is losing her mind listening to this.
Well,
We're going to have to tell her to listen to the end of this episode.
Alicia, remember who gave you some justice with talking about Phoenix Wright during the Nintendo Direct?
What is this, like sucking up to her?
Yes, obviously. We all know that she's the one that's in charge here.
Yeah. This is why we're doing this trivia, because, well, the cat's away, the mice will play. Let's see. In what year did the Nintendo Wii launch?
2005.
That's a good guess. I would say like 5 or 6.
6 is correct. That's right. That one I would have known, but I would have to thought about it.
Yeah.
Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is considered a spiritual successor to which series?
Castlevania.
That is correct. Like, some of these are really, like, they're very specific. I mean, they would take very specific knowledge. Like, playable character Ethan Thomas works for the FBI serial crime unit in which game series?
Is that the one that's what is it called? The one where it like bounces back and forth, so you play him, and then is it Heavy Rain?
No, that's a good guess. I think the character is named Ethan.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Is Condemned.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question, like, you would have to have played that
yeah.
game.
I think my cousin really liked those games, but I couldn't tell you anything about them.
What is the name of the cloud gaming service launched by Google in November 2019?
Stadia, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct. What animals threaten the player in A Plague Tale: Innocence?
Rats?
Yeah.
Mice, yeah.
Alright.
One of those two.
Who plays Sam Porter Bridges in Death Stranding?
What's the Walking Dead guy?
Or is it?
The Walking Dead guy.
Yeah. I don't know
So
his
is there
name.
a G in his name?
Is his name Ethan or something?
His name is Daryl Walking Dead.
Daryl Walking Dead guy. Final answer.
Norman Reedus.
Norman Reedus.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a G in
Of
there,
course.
exactly.
Of course, that guy.
How do you spell Norman?
G-N.
WALKINGDAD guy.
Yeah, his name is Walking Dead Guy. There's a G in there.
Guy.
And walking.
Which company produced the Telstar series of consoles in the late 1970s?
I have no idea.
Is it? I don't know.
Coleco.
Oh.
Do you know what Coleco stands for?
No.
I was just going to say nonsense.
Connecticut Leather Company.
Oh. Huh?
It does.
No more questions.
We don't have time to get into the backstory of why that happens. If you take my class, you'll learn.
I'll report back to you.
Yeah, thank you.
What is the name given to the PlayStation 5 controller, replacing the previous line of DualShock controllers?
Oh, it's the DualSense.
That's correct. What was the first Nintendo console to have HD support?
King.
I was just say like the Wii U.
Wii U is correct.
Oh.
I didn't think it was the GameCube or the Wii.
What game comes pre-installed on every PlayStation 5 and is used as a tech demo for the console's new controller?
Little Astrobot guy.
Astro's
I
Playroom.
don't know if you want the. I don't
know
what
the
is
name
the VR game called? Do you know? Because that's also Astrobot's Adventure or something like that.
Yeah, it's Astrobot something.
Because I think that's what I was like. Is it Astro's Playroom? Then I'm like, no, I think that's the VR one.
Right. And I get those. And then there was the other one that with the PlayStation Eye camera, there was when the PlayStation 4 launched, there was that demo and like he was in the camera. He was in the controller.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. There was like a game that came with that. We'll end on this one. Let's see. For which console re-release was the game Star Fox 2 finally released in 2017?
Wait, so
What
what?
do you-
Can you say that again, please? Sorry.
For which console re-release was the game Star Fox 2 finally released in 2017?
That would have been
Wii
on
U?
the SNES, the Super Nintendo, like, maybe not the Super Nintendo, like virtual console, right?
It was the classic edition. It's
Okay.
the little one that you plugged into your TV.
Okay.
That was the first official release of Star Fox 2.
Yeah,
Was on that.
which was disappointing.
It's an interesting game. It's very different from the
Yeah.
first
Are
Star
these all the
Fox.
ones that you read?
Well, I put the ones on top. You can look through the rest if you want. All right. That does it for this week's episode. Thank you, Mario and Christina, for joining me. Thank you for everyone who is listening. You can find old episodes and more content and everything at salukigames.com. Hope that you have a very productive week playing games and everything, and we'll be back soon with another episode.